The fantasy runs like this. You overpower the guards, burst into the secret bunker, and pin him down. Adolf Hitler, you say. I arrest you for crimes against humanity. But then the imagery darkens. You imagine severing his spine, puncturing his eardrums, leaving him unable to move or see, just to feel agony for an eternity. This creates a paradox. You can have these plans for the most wicked soul in history, while simultaneously opposing the death penalty and believing that souls and evil are unscientific concepts. As a species, we use showerheads to deliver poison gas and airplanes as weapons. We are miserably violent. Yet we are also extraordinarily altruistic and compassionate. The confusion comes from context. We don't hate violence, we hate the wrong kind. When it's the right kind, we cheer, hand out medals, and vote for its champions. To understand our behavior, we must decode the context of our actions. Why pulling a trigger is an appalling crime in one setting, but a heroic sacrifice in another. Understanding the root of an action requires moving past standard models of single variable cause and effect. We can use two lenses. The first is Dr. Robert Sapolsky's temporal biological cascade, mapping the horizontal axis of time. The second is the 8th century philosophy of Adi Shankara's Advaita Vedanta, forming a vertical axis that maps the levels of reality. Lasting change requires not only mapping the biological history of our impulses, but shifting the level of reality from which our consciousness operates. You are holding a gun in a riot. A stranger runs at you, holding something you can't quite identify. You pull the trigger. Afterward, you see the object was just a cell phone. To ask what caused this, we look back. 1 second before, your amygdala, central to fear and violence, initiated the trigger pull. Your frontal cortex tried to intervene, but it was too late. Hours to days before, your hormone levels were already setting the stage. If you have elevated testosterone or stress hormones in your blood, you are more likely to misidentify a neutral facial expression as threatening. In a crisis, the conscious mind is often a passenger to a chemical environment that has already primed the brain for a violent response. Months to years earlier, chronic stress and trauma were remodeling your brain, enlarging the amygdala and causing the frontal cortex to atrophy. Even in the womb, exposure to stress hormones creates epigenetic changes, permanently activating certain genes and turning off others, like those linked to antisocial violence. Centuries ago, your ancestors may have been nomadic pastoralists. Living in harsh environments with vulnerable herds led them to invent cultures of honor, valuing retributive violence, values that still influence how you were raised. For millions of years, humans have evolved as a confused species, floating somewhere between extreme aggression and extreme passivity. A single action is not a simple choice. It is the mathematical result of a million-year biological inheritance. While biology asks when, Adi Shankara asks how real. He organizes experience into 3 grades of reality, or sata. The lowest tier is pratipasika, subjective reality, dreams and misperceptions, like mistaking a rope for a snake. Next is vyavaharika, empirical reality. This is the material world where Sapolsky's biological timeline operates. The highest tier is paramarthika, absolute reality, the non-dual truth of Brahman. In this model, ethical failure stems from avidya, or ignorance of our true nature. Avidya creates the false perception of a separate, isolated ego. This perception of otherness is exactly what triggers the amygdala's tribal us versus them response. This suggests that ethical failure is a result of being trapped in the illusion of duality. If we are bound by biological inheritance and empirical illusion, how is it that humans can change so suddenly? In 1914, British and German soldiers negotiated a brief Christmas truce. In just hours, they went from trying to kill one another to playing soccer and exchanging gifts. During the My Lai massacre, American pilot Hugh Thompson saw his fellow soldiers shooting civilians. In seconds, he undid his lifetime of military conditioning. He landed his helicopter and turned his guns on his fellow Americans to protect the surviving villagers. Human behavior is highly mutable. While physical rewiring takes years, the brain's categorization of us and them can be rewritten in an instant. Shankara's method for this shift is jnana, or spiritual knowledge. In Advaita Vedanta, ethical living is not about forcing moral compliance. It is the spontaneous result of realizing non-duality. When an individual recognizes that their Atman is identical to the universal Brahman, the ego dissolves. In this state, harming another becomes logically impossible, because the illusion of the other no longer exists. To move beyond our worst behaviors, we rely on the biological capacity for change, but the process begins with how we perceive reality. Ethics is the result of seeing without the veil of ignorance.